Good morning. Welcome to Bible for Breakfast. Today we're beginning a new book. We're going to endeavor to go into the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, commentarily, Ecclesiastes is thought to be written by Solomon. He identifies himself in chapter 1 as the son of David. And I'm going to just read you a little something out of the Haley's Bible Handbook. It says Solomon, the author of this book, was the most famous and most powerful king in all the world. In his day, he was noted for wisdom, riches, literary attainments. So there seems to be a recurrent theme in this book, and let me just read you what it says. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And again, that means empty. This is the theme of the book. It embodies also an attempt to give a philosophical answer to how best to live in the world where all is vanity. I think that's very true today. The book contains many things of superb beauty and transcendent wisdom, but its dominant strain is one of unutterable melancholy, so different from the Psalms. David, Solomon's father, in his long, hard struggle to build the kingdom, was forever shouting, Rejoice! Shout for joy! Sing praise to God! Solomon, sitting in the peaceful security on the throne of David that he had built, with riches, honor, splendor, power, and living in the most fabled luxury, was one was the one man in all the world of men who could have called himself happy, yet his unceasing restraint was all is vanity. The book is a product of Solomon's old age, leaves us with a distinct impression that Solomon was not a happy man. The word vanity occurs 37 times. So in these statements, much like the Proverbs, we'll just read through them and see what Solomon's wisdom points to. And when he again talks to the aspect of vanity or emptiness, I think we have to do a little self examination again as to uh, the merit of what is fulfilling in our lives versus what is vain or empty in our lives. So let's give her a go. The words of the preacher, the son of the king of David. So this would be Solomon. Vanities of vanities, says the preacher. Vanities of vanities, all is vanity. So if he wrote this as an old man, he gets to the place to where he looks backward now at his life. He sees his accomplishment. He sees what's been done. And I think the key thing for us in this book is to realize that there's no greater joy than what David had in worshiping and praising the Lord for who he was. Though you have everything your heart could fleshly desire, if you don't have peace with God, if you don't have a love for God, it's all going to just seem to be stuff. And we know all about stuff. Our houses are packed with stuff that we could get rid of it in a heartbeat, and there wouldn't be any loss. But the thing that's most valuable and the things that is most important is that relation that we have with God, that one-to-one personal intimate time relationship that we spend to him. So he continues, what profit has a man from all his labor? What's the result in which he toils under the sun? So he asks a rhetorical question here, and now he answers it. One generation passes away, another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. The sun also rises, the sun goes down. it hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes toward the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually. So here he is, and he's sitting on his throne and he's just pondering matters. I think this is how he wrote this. He was just pondering things, just considering all that he had seen, all he had done. He looked at the temple and he says, "What good is this temple if the worship of the people?" Now, again, during the end of Solomon's reign is when he started having problems with people and those who would be rebellious to the kingdom, which ultimately led to rebellion or rejection of God. One generation passes away, another one comes. He's seen this in his life. He's seen babies born, they live, they rise up, and then they die. He says the earth abides forever. There's a constancy now of man, at least in his heart at this point in time, saying, I've been around for a long time. And next after me, another generation will come, and another generation will come. And the world is still the same. Sun up, sun down, sun up, sun down. The wind goes toward the south. Now, again, with the rotation of the earth comes the movement of wind and storms, etc., etc. And he notates this. Someday the wind comes from the south, other times the wind comes from the north. The wind is a constant factor. It turns around to the north, the wind whirls continually and comes again on its circuit. So there's a pattern. There's a pattern that man can follow in these things. All rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. So he says, here we are, the Sea of Galilee never floods to the place to where it overflows its bank. There's a discharge at the southern end of the Sea of Galilee. There's an intake at the northern end of the Sea of Galilee. And he says the level remains. It'll go down in the summer a little bit because of the lack of water, but all rivers run to the sea. I'm fascinated with this. Check your map. The only rivers that don't run to the sea are man-made, like the Salton Sea, and that's a polluted river. Another one is the Dead Sea. It's filled with chemicals because it has no discharge, and there's no fresh water coming in to refresh it. He says, all rivers run to the sea, yet the sea is not full. Consider this just for a second. As God has contained the system of the cosmos, the earth, the functioning of the earth, there's the exact amount of water that was, I believe, at the creation. There'll be the exact amount of water at the end of time when God brings a new heaven and a new earth. It's the constancy of the system that God has designed, and it's a closed system, so to speak, because it's our system. It's contained within our earth factor. To the place which the rivers come, and there they return again. So again, there's a constancy, a constancy, a constancy. Verse 8, he says, all things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. We don't ever get to a place we say, I've seen enough, maybe for a moment. But again, our eyes are always functioning and they're always taking things in. Same with our ears filled with hearing, unless there's some sort of an impairment. But then even that today can be repaired to where people can hear. That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun. Amazing. What a brilliant statement. He says, from the beginning of time to the creation to where we are right now, everything is the same. There's no, it's constant. We see that. That's the ordered system that we live in. There is nothing new under the sun, at least in our system, at least on earth. All things remain the same. We have four seasons. We have wind and rain and heat and cold and etc., etc. But they remain the same. There's a cycle that goes on that we can follow. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? Now, again, they say, we found a new species, a new animal, a new breed. But if they really look at it, if anything, it's just a mutation of a known species, or it's a species that man has ignored. See, there's still things that man has not discovered. They say that in the ocean, there's things that man has yet to know and understand. See, this is new. It has already been in ancient times before us. So, see, it's there. We're just discovering it now. Nor will there be any remembrance of the things that are to come. So, again, even these new discoveries, they're here already. We just need to find them by those who will come after, the next generation. Um, I'm from the generation that was born in the 1950s. We were different than the generation born in the 60s, who was different from the generation in the 70s, etc., etc., etc. But you know what's funny? In my generation, the teenagers in the 60s, the 50s, and when I was a teenager in the 60s, we discovered bell bottoms. Well, you know that they had been around for ages and ages. That's what the sailors wore back in the the turn of the century when they had their uniforms, and there was a reason that they had those, and then they became a fashion statement, and then they went away. And a while back, bell bottoms tried to come back again, but they will. They'll flourish. They'll pop up. Somebody will just say, "Hey, you know those bell bottoms are really sharp. We need to get some of those." So again, cyclical. It's cyclical. It's cyclical. In verse 12, he says, "I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. And I set my heart to seek and search out by concerning wisdom concerning all that is done under heaven. This burdensome task God has given to the sons of man, by which they may be exercised." In other words, the exercise here is a mental exercise in digging deeper to know God more. "I have seen all the works done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity and grasping for the wind." Now, again, vanity is emptiness, grasping for the wind. No one can grab a handful of wind. Can't be done. But he says the task here, watch, this burdensome task God has given to the sons of man, by which they may be exercised. In other words, as they seek God, as they inquire, as they want more knowledge, they in turn make these discoveries. And the discoveries are then written in books or written down, and the books are put away and long forgotten after generations. And then somebody discovers the book again and says, "Oh, yeah, remember this." And now he begins to bring forth these sayings. What is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be numbered. So you can't number what you don't have. And he says, what is crooked cannot be made straight. Now, there in the day they would say, straighten out the paths and fill in the valleys, for the king was coming. But if you look at a river, we don't see any rivers that run a straight course. All their courses are crooked. All their courses weave in and out, and they fit the topography of the land. I communed with my heart, saying, look, I have attained greatness and have gained more wisdom than all who were before me in Jerusalem. So he realizes that he's been blessed by God that he's the smartest man, has all wisdom, understanding. My heart has understood great wisdom and knowledge. I set my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. So, in his exploration of wisdom, he now discovers that there's a part of this wisdom that is just foolishness. And this is the part that if you don't learn and apply God's knowledge to your wisdom, you'll become nothing more than an educated simpleton. I set my heart to know wisdom and know madness and folly. I perceived that this also is grasping at the wind. Hmm. Notice his next statement here. He says, "For in much wisdom is much grief." There's a saying, the more you know, the more you know you don't know. The more you don't know. The more you know, the more you don't know. And that's true. We can always learn more. We can always learn more. We can always learn more. He who increases knowledge increases sorrow. I think that's always because there's more knowledge to be had. And I think in the case of Solomon, it's the application of that knowledge, again, in wisdom, that is his burden. Because here he looks out over all that he has and he comes to the realization. And if you've read this book, you will understand this. The only thing lacking in his life is a pure, dedicated, focused love for God. That's what makes people unsatisfied. That's what makes people do things, and then when they get done, they say that it's just vain, it's just empty. If God's not in it, if God's not in it, then the purpose is distorted and the purpose is confused. We have to make God the center and the focus of all we think, say, and do. Then our knowledge won't be vanity, our knowledge will be wisdom. Well, I think we're going to have a great time in the book of Ecclesiastes. I think there's things in here that we can really grab a hold of and set straight in our heart. Now, remember, for in much wisdom is much grief. That's an attitude of your heart. That's an attitude of your heart. And Solomon is writing from the standpoint of he's seen everything that's been done, everything that he's done, but he's still empty. Why is there an emptiness? Because he needs to fill his life. He needs to give his whole heart to God and the worship of God. Why was David so happy and Solomon so miserable at this point in his life? Because David was a worshiper of God. David's whole life was built around worship, praising the Lord, trusting the Lord, giving wisdom, giving just joy to the Lord. The joy of the Lord is my strength, David would write. The Lord is my strong tower. I will rush into it and I will be saved. David understood God and who God was. Well, going to be an adventure here in Ecclesiastes, and I pray that you will follow along with us. Read, give some consideration to these things, and see maybe if in your own heart there's an emptiness that comes from you're not applying enough God into your life. And again, for those of you who don't know him, Jesus is there. He's there for you. He died for your sins. He desires a relationship, a working relationship with you. And all you need to do is invite him in and allow him to get behind the wheel, and he will lead you, guide you, and direct you because he loves you. And he died for your sins. And he's the only way that a man will reach the place of knowing eternity. Continue to pray for all that's going on. Hard season for some people, especially during this time of disease. So pray, keep God strong in your heart, and be thankful for everything. Lord bless.